Today's report will be the G7 summary recap. I'm going to provide all of you CBC's summary of the G7 and provide my commentary. But get this, they called the G7 a complete roller coaster with a disastrous ending, leaving more questions than answers. Oh boy, let's get into the show. Let's go.
President Donald Trump is once again the disruptor at a G7 summit in Canada. He's also once again muddied the outlook on Canada-U.S. trade. Trump has left the summit a day early, but apparently on good terms with Prime Minister Mark Carney.
President, any statement on why you're leaving the G7 early for Washington?
Well, I have to be back. Very important. I want to just thank our great host. He did a fantastic job. Thank you in Canada. But you probably see what I see, and I have to be back as soon as I can.
I'm very grateful for the president's presence, his contributions,
Are you going to have a communique on Iran?
And I fully understand why.
We'll see
why
you on the
must
plane.
return.
Trump and Prime Minister Carney spoke to reporters there after posing for the G7 family photo. The U.S. president didn't elaborate on why he was leaving the summit, but the White House says it's because of the situation in the Middle East. And we'll bring you more on that in just a few minutes. But first, we want you to hear Trump's...
1 second. You know what? I don't buy any of this, by the way. The reason that he left the G7, in my opinion, I could be completely wrong in this. You could leave a comment and leave your reason why he's leaving. My reason is that he goes to the G7 to hang out with a bunch of liberals. He's probably like, I can only handle 24 hours of this garbage and I'm out. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't be able to handle 30 minutes at this freaking conference.
Comments just hours after leaving the summit, which are casting doubt on new progress in trade talks between Canada and the U.S. The Prime Minister's office announced yesterday there could be a trade and security deal in place in just 30 days. But here's what Trump said on Air Force One overnight in response to a reporter's question about making Canada the 51st state.
I think it's a much better deal from Canada, but, you know, it's up to them. They're going to have to pay a lot of tariffs and things. They're going to have to pay a lot of money for the dome, for the Iron Dome. They want to be a part of it. We may make a separate deal on that, by the way. We discussed that, yeah, with the dome. That may be a separate deal. They want to be at $71 billion. They're going to pay.
There could be a dome thing separate from the tariff.
They'll be in the dome. Yeah, they'll be under the dome.
Trump mistakenly referring there to the Iron Dome, apparently meaning instead his proposed Golden Dome missile defense plan. It remains to be seen what any of those remarks will actually mean for a potential trade deal. But let's explore that a little bit more with Janice McGregor, who is covering the G7 summit, part of the CBC News team in Alberta, and she is live at the Media Center in Banff, just up the road in Banff from Kananaskis. It sounded yesterday in that PMO statement, Janice, that there was progress on trade with that potential deal just 30 days away, and then Trump's comments on Air Force One overnight. Can you decipher that for us?
Bear with me while I try to make some order out of this disorder. And I should say that, of course, it's very early here on the ground in the Rockies. Canadian officials have yet to respond to our requests for some kind of a statement reflecting on what was said on Air Force One that would allow us to assess the potential injury from the whiplash that people might be feeling after yesterday. You saw those very positive, laudatory comments about the summit, Trump seeming to almost be apologizing for having to leave because, you know, he had enjoyed his time. And of course...
Okay, I have to stop. He enjoyed his time. That's where I have to stop this thing. Doesn't look like Donald Trump enjoyed his time. It looks like he played the liberals perfectly. Show up, take a couple photos, then leave and say 51st state or pay for the Golden Dome.
Of course, we had optimistic comments from Canadian officials after the bilateral conversation with Donald Trump, this talk of progress, allowing them to accelerate, perhaps, set this 30-day deadline, a reflection of perhaps some optimism, some momentum coming out of this. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's ambassador in Washington, said on Power and Politics last night, still firm, that this agreement they were pursuing would be something that would see an end to the harm that Donald Trump's tariff policy was doing to Canada's economy in exchange for, as Mark Carney has proposed, this new security partnership. But going by the president's comments there on Air Force One, you know, he doesn't sound like someone who has any intention of giving up that tariff hammer, right? He was, it went on after the tape you played to talk about how his tariffs are bringing in $88 billion in revenue for the U.S. government. I should remind people that those are tariffs that are paid by American businesses, American consumers, but he believes
This is the first time I actually see CBC reporting that correctly. The tariffs, Donald Trump's tariffs, are paid for by U.S. citizens, not Canadian citizens. It's Canadian citizens that pays the elbows up tariffs. We don't want counter tariffs. We don't want to put tariffs on the U.S. because all it is a tax on you.
he believes everything is working here. And so in the cold light of day, does this 30-day deadline now look like perhaps a countdown to a point where the Carney government is going to have to say to its domestic stakeholders, okay, I guess it's time now to retaliate ourselves if they are not, in fact, likely to convince Donald Trump himself that these tariffs should or could be lifted.
There you have it,
We should also note that that 30-day deadline is after the July 8th deadline that Trump himself has set to have deals with all sorts of countries all around the world in response to his so-called reciprocal tariff play, including some leaders who are here in Kananaskis, hoping to maybe get some FaceTime with Donald Trump in and around their expanded conversations with G7 leaders today. Those include Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, who was to have had her own bilateral conversation with Trump, is now being stood up on that. She will be in a bilateral conversation with Mark Carney.
Can you believe it? A Mexican president flew to Canada using Air Canada. She probably didn't get her luggage or it's completely destroyed. And now she's going to be sent home. She only went to Canada to meet Donald Trump. She didn't come to talk to Mark Carney. She's going to be packing with Air Canada and sent home.
Carney, certainly these latest events likely to shape that conversation, but Carney also has some relationship building to do. Things have been tense with Mexico as they have pursued their own paths, respectively, with the Trump administration. But now they have a bit of common cause of, frankly, perhaps being jerked around a bit, not even sure sort of how to negotiate their way out from under all of this and what that means in the context of their North American trading relationships.
Isn't that hilarious? So all of these people, including India, Modi, came to the G7 just to see Donald Trump. And Donald Trump left. He didn't see any of them and left all these people with Mark Carney. Oh, so funny.
So, Janice, with this early departure for Donald Trump, the schedule and the plans for this last day of the summit are upended. Lay out what's ahead now as things stand.
Yeah, that's right. So prior to all of this, Canadian officials did intend the headline to be today an announcement of exactly how Canada's new support for Ukraine was going to work. There's an additional $2 billion worth of support rolling out as part of Canada's increased defense spending this year. Key bilateral talks with the head of NATO, the Ukrainian president who is here, meeting with G7 leaders.
I'm going to stop that right now. It's actually $4.3 billion. The $2 billion she's talking about is for military equipment, but there's another $2+ billion in cash. That's right. They already announced it in the past, but now they've confirmed we're going to actually release those dollars to you now.
Leaders this morning. That was supposed to be the story of the day. Of course, now Donald Trump is gone. That conversation changes. Trump, of course, yesterday musing that he thinks Russia should be part of this group. Obviously, the other leaders have a very different perspective.
How embarrassing was that? Oh, man.
On that. And then we move on to these expanded talks, the 2 hours scheduled this afternoon on energy security that people have flown in from India, Australia, South Africa, Brazil to join. Again, why fly in for those 2 hours? Well, it was probably because they wanted FaceTime with Donald Trump, who was to have been in that room, won't be now. Specifically about Narendra.
Isn't that hilarious? Now they're going to be stuck with Mark Carney talking about net zero. Energy superpower net zero. They're going to be like, this 2-hour meeting is going to be 2 minutes. I'm out.
Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, about whom there have been so many concerns expressed about him even being here, so many protests specifically about him being here. Important to note, this summit was supposed to be focusing on things like transnational repression, foreign interference. How does that play into the bilateral conversation Mark Carney scheduled to have with Modi? I should note, very late in the day. After, reporters will have a chance to question the Prime Minister, I should add. So whatever is said behind those closed doors may be difficult to ascertain, but certainly a lot of concern by domestic stakeholders here in Canada about exactly what might be said.
That's it, Canada. There's no more, okay? What is your thought on the G7? Was this a massive success? At the beginning, CBC was reporting that this whole thing was a massive success, the best G7 in Canadian history. Well, look how fast things change in 24 hours. The entire thing, it's like Jenga. When you pull out the blocks, they pulled out the wrong block and the entire thing came crumbling down. Leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this G7. I want to do a quick announcement. Thank you everybody that's following and leaving comments and sharing with others. The page, my page, has now reached 30,000. 50,000 is the next milestone, and then we're going directly to 100,000. Thank you for all your support. Couple more items before the video's done is Conservative MP resigns today, giving Pierre Poilievre a run in the Alberta by-election. About Pierre Poilievre, I actually got a phone call today from Pierre Poilievre. I could not believe it. And the reason is why is he calling the commoners? Do you think Mark Carney would call a commoner? I don't think so. And the thing is, I do all of this because I care about Canada. I want a better Canada for everyone, even the elbows up people. I just want this country to be the richest country on planet Earth, where we could go to a hospital and actually get service, where our children have opportunities and will eventually own a detached house. None of this 2x2 blocks in the sky or this manufactured home that they're selling us, where we actually get powerful paychecks and we can take our families on vacation. Yeah, real vacations, not just road trips. We get to fly around the world. And for our seniors that can no longer afford to retire because the cost of living and inflation has gone so out of control that their pensions are worthless. And all of our rental rates and mortgage costs, it's way too expensive. And when you go to the store and you try to buy a piece of beef, 3 pieces of steak at Costco cost nearly $100. This is not sustainable. This G7 is a wake-up call. We need change in this country. And I wake up every day to provide all of you the news so that we could get that change. And it was really nice to talk to Pierre Poilievre. He's a normal guy. He was asking me questions. He said, what are your thoughts about the G7? And you know what I said? I said, isn't it funny that Mark Carney was elbows up this entire time during the campaign? And then for the G7, he wasn't elbows down, he was shoulders down. And Pierre thought he got a laugh out of that. Yeah, and this is a reminder. I mean, I'm just a common person working hard and providing everybody information and having fun while doing it. And you never know who's paying attention. So you have a voice as well. Get out there, make some content, and have your voice heard. I'll see you on the next report.